WordPress Accessibility Day 2023. Alt text in the age of automation. How's it actually going? With speaker Caroline Desrosiers, founder and CEO of Scribely. This presentation was recorded September 27th, 2023.
Let me share my slides with you all. Okay. All right. Hope that's coming through okay. Hi, everyone. Caroline Desrosiers from Scribely, and this session is all about alt text in the age of automation. Just a little bit about myself. I'm based in Northern California, and I'm the founder and CEO of my company that's been in business for about 3.5, almost 4 years at this point. And we focus on content accessibility solutions for images, videos, and podcasts. So this is my first time at WordPress Accessibility Day. Delighted to be here. Also, my first time presenting on this topic. I'm an advocate for really great quality alt text, but there's a lot of interesting things happening in automation and AI, and it felt like the right time to explore this topic. So let's get started. So here we are in 2023, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say most alt text on the web right now is bad. I don't know if you all have the same opinion. Happy to hear yours, but it's just kind of not meeting the mark when it comes to WCAG requirements. The WCAG requirements state that we need to be providing an equivalent text alternative. This is the point of the WCAG Success Criterion 1.1.1. Very important alt text to get right, and we're seeing a lot of missing, inaccurate, and incomplete descriptions just about everywhere. I have two up on the slide that kind of represent basic alt text that we'd see coming from AI. One is a person painting a wall, and another one is maybe an image of one person. So not all that descriptive, doesn't really give us a lot of visual detail, definitely not providing an equivalent text alternative. So those are just a few examples. So let's say that again, just for emphasis. Alt text must provide an equivalent text alternative. And think about that for a moment. What does equivalent mean to you? And feel free to drop your comments in the chat for everyone to take a look at. How can we write an equivalent text alternative? How can we truly replace an image? So now just to go through some of the top 5 alt text errors that we see most commonly occurring on the web. The first is keyword stuffing. This technique is really primarily for SEO purposes, it seems, because it's not all that descriptive. It involves actually just putting in a list of keywords to maybe rank higher in search results. And here's an example I have on the slide here for the photo that's represented. Person, rainbow wig, bold, makeup. These might be keywords that someone might search for this image, but they don't belong in alt text because they're not all that descriptive. We also see a lot of overly simplistic descriptions that kind of all blend together. So that might look something like, for this image, a person with colorful hair. Doesn't tell us a lot about what's going on. We also see some really bad examples of image file names making it into the alt text, just a string of random words or numbers, just copying the file name right into the alt text. Formulaic descriptions. This is a big one. So this involves some sort of combination of different terms or components. For example, product plus title plus color equals alt text. So in this case, if we were advertising the wig this person's wearing, it might say something like long wavy rainbow wig, heat resistant, right? So something that just seems kind of awkwardly product related in the alt text. And then finally, we have AI generated. So a lot of the AI generated alt text really stands out as either inaccurate or incomplete, like someone hasn't actually reviewed that alt text. So here's just a few common errors that we're seeing out there on the web, contributing to what I've called bad alt text. So just a little bit of homework. Let me back up. And you can do this after the session or multitask and do it now. I won't judge you. But what I'd like you to do is go to any e-commerce website and check out the alt text on both their homepage and their product pages. This can be your favorite e-commerce brand or business out there. Just check into how they're doing, and you can review the alt text in a few different ways. My favorite is through this Chrome extension called Web Developer that allows you to quickly view the alt text. But you can also just right-click any image in any browser and inspect the image to find what the alt text is there. So take a look at that and see what you can find. I'm assigning this homework because I'm pretty confident you're going to find issues with alt text. And I'd love to hear some feedback, maybe going in the chat, about what percentage do you think in terms of e-commerce sites that actually have missing, inaccurate, or incomplete alt text on either their home pages or their product pages. If you could venture a guess, what do you think the percentage is right now? So Scribely actually did a study on this that we released for the last Global Accessibility Awareness Day a few months back in 2023. And I really wanted to collect some research on this because I kind of had this unproven theory that it's a whole lot worse than what we're seeing from other statistics about alt text out there, like the WebAIM Million study that says about 52 or 58.2% of home pages are missing alt text. I was seeing a lot more than that. So we did this study to collect data on how much alt text is out there. And what we found is not a single company currently possesses a homepage with content that is fully accessible, meaning there was at least one error that we found with images and videos. And this is the top 100 e-commerce providers in terms of their popularity in search results. Here are a few other stats that I'm putting up on the slide. For home pages, 27 had some descriptive alt text, only one had meaningful and descriptive alt text for all images. For product pages, the situation was much, much worse with alt text. 97% had inaccurate, incomplete, or missing alt text, and only one had high quality alt text for every image. So most of the product alt text that we were finding was formulaic. And for social media, 12% of accounts had descriptive alt text on Twitter and 3% had descriptive alt text on Instagram. I think the difference there might be because of the Twitter or X alt button that was implemented, where you can actually see when alt text has been added for an image. So you can check out more results from this study on the Scribely blog, but I wanted to put that up here just so you can get a sense of what we're looking at right now in 2023 for companies that have actually arguably higher budgets than most to handle this work. So we have to ask ourselves, what's the holdup here? A few possible reasons that I'd like to go through. The first could be awareness. It's possible, I guess, but most should know about alt text at this point. It gets a lot of stage time at conferences, marketing, accessibility related conferences, and there's a lot of visibility into this accessibility requirement. Expertise, alt text pretty searchable at this point. There are a lot of guides and tutorials walking through how to do this exactly. So I think there's a lot of information and ways to develop expertise out there. Technology could be another reason, kind of an excuse, but most platforms have alt text fields at this point. So there is a place to actually place the alt text. Budget, this is a big one. Yes, there are budget concerns, but you know what? There is money to be found for website copy, SEO, social media. Can kind of argue the case that alt text should be included there too. And time. Certainly, yes, alt text does take time, but I'd also like to point out that a lot of things take time that matter, and alt text is definitely one of them. So all possible reasons why there might be a holdup here. My own personal theory that's totally opinionated is people don't like to write more than they have to. But who really wants to admit that, right? So take it with a grain of salt on the whole writing thing, but it might offer some reasons why ChatGPT has become so popular. It's just this barrier to writing. that a lot of us experience. So whatever the reason may be, the fact of the matter is, many of the top organizations today are they're using some form of automation to manage the alt text for their images, and that's surprising because they do potentially have higher budgets for this type of work. But I'd like to point out that taking shortcuts doesn't change the rules when it comes to accessibility. Auto or AI generated alt text still needs to provide that equivalent text alternative for the image. So these automated steps don't really, they're missing the mark still. Okay, so part one is how exactly do we tackle writing equivalent text alternatives? This is pretty much the main point of alt text, so I felt like it was important to start here. Most shortcuts that are available for alt text don't actually help you do that. And this is problematic for accessibility reasons. So we're going to start this session off with how exactly can we write alt text. And I'm going to try to stay away from the basics because there are a lot of tutorials out there. So let's get into it. Alt text beyond the basics. My definition for alt text is a short, meaningful description that captures the why of an image. Now, a lot of people focus on the short part, and I'd really like to underline and highlight the meaningful part, because that's really the essence of what it takes to write alt text that actually makes images interesting and distinctive, and we're getting to those unique details. Also, character count, big question, and there are a lot of arguments to be made. Sometimes there are platform limitations, but generally speaking, Scribely recommends less than 250 characters to write alt text. So this is I'm going to walk you through the actual formula that we follow for writing image descriptions at Scribely. So this is an answer to the question, what's the secret to writing great alt text? First up, there's a lot of work that happens before you actually write anything at all. The first is to analyze context. So that's everything surrounding the image, including text, images, the page, the audience, really anything, cultural details that might be important, that might be factoring in. Think about context. Next up, we have purpose. Think about the role that the image plays for the audience. Why is the image there in the first place? Why was it selected? What role is it playing? And finally, meaning, as step 3, message the image sends to the audience. So if this image could talk, what would it say? It might say something like, look at this, buy the thing, or like me as an image, something. It's trying to tell you something. Decode that message, and that might help you write your alt text. This also, I think, really helps with writer's block. So I recommend not skipping this pre-work if you are struggling to get started writing your alt text. When you're ready to write and you've gone through those pre-work steps, the question is, what is the best way to structure alt text? And there is a formula for this as well. First up, I always recommend identifying the image in some sort of way. So this helps the user immediately visualize the right information. Is it a painting? Is it a chart? Is it a graph? That can really happen right away, so we can get people in the right headspace to imagine the descriptive details after that. The only exception to this is photos. You don't need to say photo of or image of. After identifying, think about what is the focus of this image or the main subject. Now, this could be a person, a place, an object, an artistic effect. What is coming through as the most important visual detail? Where did your eye go first? That's often where the focus is. And then details. Think about the meaningful and relevant details. So those are really important. You can't say everything and keep it short, but you want to think about what makes that image unique and what details you'll need to include there. And then finally, read it back. Does the alt text sufficiently describe the image? Did you actually provide a text equivalent, or do you need more description? So let's see this in action, and we're going to use a really fun GIF as an example that I have up here on screen. So writing alt text from scratch for this GIF using the formula that I talked about. In terms of an identification, we can call this a movie GIF to immediately get people into the right headspace. The focus is Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka, and the details are motion, the motion that he's doing, his physical appearance, and his expression. So these are all relevant details that we're going to try to work into our alt text. And the alt text is movie GIF. Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka, wearing a whimsical bright purple jacket, decorative vest, and top hat, quickly props an elbow up on a counter, hand against his cheek, flashing his eyes and giving an insincere side-eyed smile. So this moment is famous. It's in a lot of memes. It's the condescending Wonka moment. And this description rings in at 232 characters. Now, I did kind of color in the lines and make sure that I wasn't getting too interpretive, but when it comes to humor and GIFs, I want to encourage everyone to really maybe try to bend the rules a little bit. He's clearly being sarcastic in this moment, and it may be relevant to just call that out as the emotion that he's expressing. So if it's important to the story, don't be afraid to do some light interpretation to get that meaning across. All right, so now we're going to get into some automation and AI shortcuts. I wanted to make this specific to WordPress. So these are actual, I'm going to go through a few extensions and plugins that are using this approach, and what exactly they're offering in terms of these tools. So we're going to go through automated approaches and also extensions using AI. But first, a philosophical question I'd love for folks to answer in the chat. It might be one that you've heard before. The question is better than nothing truly good enough? And I want to hear your thoughts on that. Better than nothing meaning I put something in my alt text, there's something there, I'll come back to it later. It's better than having nothing there at all. What's your opinion on this approach? Is this truly good enough? As we've talked about before, it certainly doesn't satisfy often that equivalent text alternative, but beyond that, why is it problematic? So in my opinion, I'm going to say it's not really truly good enough. And here we have a Bugs Bunny GIF. It's the no GIF where the no letters are just bouncing back and forth and he's making a long face. And I put that up because it's really a no for me. And that's because the alt text at that point still doesn't really satisfy WCAG. These quick fix tools make it easy to produce bad alt text in bulk, and then it becomes this overwhelming problem that you have to fix. And you've done it for all of your images. So it's quite intimidating to take this approach and then come back later. The problem just grows and goes. So putting that off means that you just have more images to describe later, more to go back to, more that are coming. You're adding new images potentially to the web all the time. That accountability of making sure those images are born accessible is so important, or the problem does grow over time. And finally, this kind of approach, the better than nothing approach, really drives down this perception of cost, where we talk a lot in accessibility about executive buy-in. This delays work indefinitely, and it drives down what it should cost to do meaningful alt text, and cost in terms of time, in terms of resources within internal teams, or in terms of external resources that are assisting the organization. So for all of these reasons, I don't think that this approach really makes sense or is scalable at all. So this formulaic alt text that we're talking about on WordPress, generally speaking, how this works is there's a formula applied for alt text. So you have site name, site description, and page title equal alt text, right? And you can use this kind of formula to immediately populate all of the descriptions of products. And I have a few product images up here on the slide that are showcasing a robot vacuum. I don't know what brand it is, but the idea is that we're looking at a product image. The other part of these plugins is that they integrate with popular SEO plugins. So they're very tied into keywords or key phrases, and encourage users to actually include those in their alt text, which often are not descriptive. An example would be, and this is what we see a lot. I'm saying there's a lot of this out there. You have a sequence of product images. You might hear as a screen reader user, robot vacuum 1, robot vacuum 2, robot vacuum 3, right? Just over and over and over again, not giving you any details at all, but there's something in there in the alt text field. So here are a few WordPress plugins. Now I've removed the names of these plugins because I want to maintain anonymity, and this is about just understanding what's out there and different approaches. But I'm also including the activations because I found those interesting. This is how many potential websites have this approach right now today. So the first plugin example has 70,000 activations, and it's the most popular by far. It derives the alt text from the file name. It's possible to customize that file name, but then you have super duper long file names that actually contain your alt text that also go not only in the image file name read out loud by the screen reader, but also in the alt attribute. There is an option to upgrade, but then that only gets you formulaic or primary keyword options with the ability to bulk correct those formulas. So it doesn't get you much further upgrading. And it's not easy to make changes or revert back. Once this action is taken, you can't actually undo it. So that's really dangerous in terms of populating your alt text with unhelpful or brief information. The second option has 20,000 activations, and this involves the traditional method of applying a formula plus an SEO-focused keyword. You can automatically override retroactively or any future images added when that plugin is activated. So you can just, with the click of a button, override any alt text that exists manually, that was written manually on your site with this formula, and then it applies until that, as long as that plugin is activated. I will say there is one plus side of this. It does provide an option to customize at the post level what that alt text is. That's what we want to see. We want to see customization, but this risk of quickly overwriting and changing your alt text, I'm not sure how many people are actually customizing. I would be skeptical of that. So thoughts on this approach? Problematic because it repeats information that's already on the page. So we already have the product title and the product and the size and the color and all of that. We don't really need to repeat that in the alt text. It doesn't tell us anything else. It also fails to provide much of any detail at all. So the visual details that we focused on and we saw in the previous examples, what makes that image unique? If it's a product image, what does the different view tell you about that product? A lot of information is contained visually within product photos that is not actually found anywhere else within the product description. So we need to focus on providing those unique details there. And this auto override makes it impossible to fix, to go back. Again, it becomes an intimidating problem to solve. All right, and next getting into some AI-generated alt text plugins on WordPress. So how these work is, it automatically creates an AI-generated description when an image is added to a post. And there's an option to add product names and incorporate SEO keywords or key phrases from SEO plugins. So again, we're seeing a very SEO-focused approach. I have an example up here on the slide of two different images. Again, product-oriented, because a lot of these are. And the formula here is keyword 1, keyword 2. So this could be an AI-generated keyword found for this image, or it could be an SEO-related keyword. And this results in very simple alt text with just 2 or 3 words like Oxford shoe and bottle of perfume. And in this case, there are a lot more details. It's a green suede Oxford shoe, strangely positioned with peaches on top of a box, but I don't feel that's important. And the perfume is not identified. It's a Chanel No. 5 bottle of perfume. So that doesn't actually tell us the significant details about these images that we would need to know from the alt text. So a few AI plugins that are in action right now, not too many, but they are out there. And I'd just like to say, this kind of made me giggle, I don't know, in a weird way. But one of them in the descriptions actually said, nobody enjoys writing image alt text. Leave it to our auto alt tag generator. So that's a plug for my theory earlier, right? Like, maybe people don't actually like to write it, and that's the problem. Clearly, these plugins are seeing that in their users and are delivering these plugins for that reason. But going for the first one, there are 3,000 activations, so not quite as many as the other. And the way this works is it automatically adds an AI description when the image is added to the WordPress site. And it can either do this for missing alt text or all images. It does allow human review, but only in a gallery view. So we can't actually see the context surrounding that image. We can only see it in the gallery view, which may make it difficult to write quality alt text. The next AI plugin has 1,000 activations. AI alt text uses computer vision and common SEO keywords to formulate alt text based on what it can see in the image. So it attempts to see what's there and then uses the best keywords it has available. It also allows human review, but only in gallery view, so making it very difficult to customize. My thoughts on this approach are, these seem to be more about a quick fix than quality, and I worry that people aren't customizing. They aren't taking those steps, because that step of customizing and adding your own inputs is actually quite challenging to do in context. They're not really providing a way to do that seamlessly. And the AI is very short and often incomplete. So we're seeing really basic descriptions coming out of these. And SEO keywords are often non-descriptive. So I don't think that makes up for describing the unique details of images. Sometimes keywords include those, but often not. They are for SEO purposes. Okay, so just a few ideas for plugin solutions that I think are needed. We need better shortcuts, and that's the point I wanted to make. There are pretty basic ways that we can do that. A few ideas. Again, these are not available, but I feel like any developers out there, maybe an opportunity. Flag missing alt text in both the page and the galleries on WordPress. So just finding any missing alt text is super helpful to users and directing them to the exact location where it's missing. This gives people the ability to go in and write alt text if they inadvertently missed it on their site. So that could be a powerful tool. Assistance with describing images in context. This is really difficult. I feel like there are a few ways that you could do this efficiently. One would be directing to an exact location, as I mentioned before, or using a grid or gallery view with links to view the context, or pulling that in somehow, maybe pulling in the product description or something like that. Anything with context that helps give you a sense of why that image is there. And then options to bulk export and import to a page or gallery. This is not easy to get alt text out and in and back in. And that's such a simple way that we could have more control. It would make it easier to use vendors, to work across teams, use digital asset management systems where we're storing our alt text, or any sort of external tools that we use to manage our images, and actually having that translate to WordPress. So any one of these solutions, I think, would be a better shortcut and a better step forward. All right, so getting into AI. Now, this is the tech. I'm going to talk about the technology that exists outside of WordPress. So moving away from the plugins that exist within the system. What's going on with AI? There's a lot of talk, especially this week. I don't know if anyone's been staying on top of the news, but some interesting things have come out to the point where I needed to check all my facts today to see if anything changed. But I'm going to go through in this section and talk about AI alt text solutions, what I think could be used as AI alt text solutions, from least to most promising. Again, in my opinion, from my perspective, but we're going to go through image recognition with confidence scores. This is an approach, computer vision plus natural language processing and combinations thereof. And then finally, multimodal and large language models. So first up, we have image recognition and scores. This is a really common approach seen across a lot of computer vision tools out there. And the way that it works is it identifies objects, places, people, text, anything it can identify within the image, actions, and it attempts to label those often with just a word or a few words, and then apply a confidence score about how certain it is that that thing is what it actually is. So you get, this view into what we have up here on the screen is a photo of a person with some green boxes drawn around different parts of the photo. And they really have this kind of interesting outfit with striped pants, a leather vest, and a yellow sequined button-down top. So very stylish, but the bounding boxes that we're seeing are the actual components of the photo that can be recognized. So we see here, pants, 96% confident. Footwear appears twice because there are two shoes in view, one at 92%, one at 85% confidence. It has 86% confidence in a person and 74% confidence in a belt. So it's attempting to see what's in this image based on how it's been trained. And the top providers that are using this model are Google Cloud Vision API. If you want to test this out, you can drop any image into Google Cloud Vision API, which is how I was able to get some of the examples that are featured in this presentation, and test it out. It looks for all sorts of things. It uses face and landmark detection, OCR, object localization, explicit content flags. That's what it's designed for, is to actually see what's in the image. Amazon recognition is another one, similarly looking for objects and scenes and activities, but also, interestingly enough, celebrities. That's a key part of Amazon recognition in the way that it's useful and has been trained. And then Clarify is another big one, identifies concepts in images. And it's trained in over 10,000 concepts and 20 million images. So it's looking for objects, themes, moods, which may yield a different result than the others. So thoughts on this approach? I think it's useful for object ID and keywording. So actually finding objects within images, that the information contained there. We can get some really good details and keywords for search results this way. But I think it's difficult to visualize a list of words, right? That we have this list of words, it is maybe identifying everything appropriately, but we still don't understand what's there. And we're missing some critical details on how everything stitches together. It's, seeing pants and belt, but the whole ensemble that guy was wearing was really quite cool. And it's missing all of those fun, unique visual details contained within the image. And I am not feeling all that confident in the confidence scores. Just in my review, I'm interested to hear others' thoughts there, but I don't know how these confidence scores are determined, but they seem to be a bit all over the place. So there's some distrust in the confidence scores there. Here's another example, and I'm going to use this image again. We're going to see it a few times just as an example for this AI section. So I'm going to describe it. It's a portrait of a person wearing a pastel colored wig and bold red and orange eye makeup, looking at us with a mysterious expression that could be wistful or bored. And here we have the results of image recognition. And what I'm going to do is read the word list that is contained here and see if we can get anything from this. So if we strung all these words together, we would get image of joy, sorrow, anger, surprise, exposed, blurred, headwear. And there's a 62% confidence rating. So I think a lot of emotion attached to this image, and that's why maybe there was some difficulty with identifying what's there. This person does have a mysterious facial expression. That's why I chose it. It's an interesting example. But ask yourself, would you trust a image recognition that is actually determined to be very unlikely or 62% confident? Is that good enough? We need to be more confident in the AI coming out of this particular approach. All right, so the next approach is computer vision plus natural language processing, or some sort of combination of those technologies. And this is AI generated human-like image description. So we're moving beyond word lists and we're actually attempting to create sentences. I'm not an AI expert, but I want to quickly define these terms so we all know what they are. Computer vision enables computers to derive information from images, videos, and other inputs. Natural language processing is about how computers interpret and comprehend human language. And image captioning is kind of like the intersection between these two. So the image is encoded into different features that are recognized and then decoded into descriptive text. So we're actually attempting to string words together to make interpretations, to try to comprehend and manipulate, and go a step further into image description. So a few providers in this space, Midjourney, doing some interesting things with their describe command. And April 4th, 2023, I'm going to start throwing out dates just to emphasize how recent all of this is. They released the describe command, allowing users to transform images into words and actually reverse the process of inputting text-based prompts to generate images. So the whole hypothesis is, well, can we use these image prompts for alt text purposes? And, you know, can it go both ways? If we use this describe command going from image to text, how can that recreate images and different versions of images? So this is a really interesting approach happening right now where we're seeing more details than before. So entering this command creates an image upload option. You upload your image, and then hitting enter returns 4 different versions of a description based on that image. And then you can actually use one of those versions to remix the image based on that description. So Midjourney is helping us create different versions of images, you know, utilizing AI, but the possibilities for alt text here could be interesting to explore. We also have Microsoft Azure with their Vision AI caption and dense caption option. So the way this works is they are recognizing, the AI is attempting to recognize objects in images, but also string them together into some sort of sentence. So a caption returns a very short description. Here we have a yellow bus. It's a toy bus with luggage on top that's kind of moving across a pavement. And the image alt text is a toy bus with luggage on top. So not bad. We could probably go into more details here. I think there might be an actual bus in the background that's blurred out in all sorts of funky colors. We can get into the style of bus. It's more vintage looking, but that's the description they have for the caption. And then a dense caption works in a different way. So it attempts to see all of the different parts of the image and then write a short caption for each one of those. So here we have an aerial view of a bunch of different colored glasses with different liquid inside, and it returns a whole scene description at the top called that is a group of glasses with different colored liquid. And it's recognizing that because it sees a close-up of a glass with pink liquid in it, a glass with blue liquid, a glass of liquid on a saucer. It's attempting to see all of these things and then string them together for a whole scene description. And it can look up, and it's looking at up to 10 regions of the image. So a different approach being taken here. And a few others using this computer vision plus natural language processing approach. Cloud-side AI, they are labeling, classifying, and moderating images to also deliver whole scene descriptions. Meta AI for Facebook and Instagram, there is alt text that can be automatically generated for the images that you post there, identifying activities, landmarks, animals, locations, relative size of elements. They've been making some effort to improve that and to also deliver descriptions that sound like they have been written, not just lists of words. And then file stack image captioning. So this returns captions as a synchronous operation when utilizing the API by just running this caption command. So a few different approaches there. So thoughts. These generally keep alt text short and succinct, but that's not always a good thing. Again, we're looking for meaning. The descriptions are often incomplete because it's focusing so much on what is the most important detail to convey. It's not getting into the territory of the relevant and meaningful details that make alt text great. It also is not able to describe images in context. I'm just taking a look at time. I want to make sure we have enough. getting into probably the most promising approach that we have right now, multimodal and large language models, and combining these. So multimodal is combining different types of data inputs to create different determinations, draw conclusions, and data by multiple types. I mean, images, voice, text, all kind of part of the same conversation you're having, the way you're engaging with AI. And these are trained on massive data sets that are aimed at recognizing, translating, and generating text in a human-like fashion. So how is this progressing here? We have ChatGPT this week announcing multimodal capabilities in ChatGPT for Plus and Enterprise users. So able to, soon people will be able to input text, voice, and image prompts into ChatGPT and have a conversation. And this is where we get into prompt engineering, where you're fine-tuning these questions that you're asking in order to get different results. You can actually test this right now in Bing Chat, this multimodal capability. So I encourage you to do that. I did it this week, attempting to write alt text, and got some very interesting results. Here I'm using that same image from earlier, and we have a GIF that's playing, and I'm asking it to write alt text for the image. It takes a moment, and then it quickly defines alt text and then attempts to write something. So it's actually, you know, there is this process where you are waiting for it to respond, but it's decoding, yes, I know what alt text means, and here you go. A person with multicolored hair and loose curls wearing a blue tank top. So pretty good, better than the others we've seen. What I did next was add some of the details that it was missing that I thought were important. And I asked it, can you please include these details, but keep it under 250 characters? And it attempts to actually, you know, write the alt text again. And it comes up with a person with a pastel wig and pink, blue, and yellow curls, red and orange eye makeup, and a wistful expression wearing a blue tank top. So I don't know why it wanted to keep in the blue tank top. It's really obsessed with that detail. I actually wouldn't include it in my alt text because I think the focus is the expression on the person's face. But, you know, there we have it. It's actually a more detailed description. A few things to note here. Faces are blurred from Bing Chat. So sometimes in your alt text, it actually describes the image as having a blurred face because that is actually what it's seeing. Kind of an awkward detail because it's not a blurred face. Also, half the time, weirdly, it refuses to add more details. It says alt text should be short, it should be functional, I won't add those details for you. But it only happened about half the time, really weird. You can use other terms like visual description or describe instead of alt text, but this may lead to interpretation. So I'm going to quickly move through this. But actually asking it to describe the image instead of write alt text, I'll read the first part of this. It said, this is a portrait of a person who loves to express themselves through their hair. Their face is not visible, but their hair speaks volumes about their personality. They have a rainbow of colors in their hair from pink to yellow to blue. So it gets very flowery and interpretive with details that don't actually belong in alt text, but it attempts to get more descriptive and to also interpret what those descriptive details mean. So interesting.
Carolyn, we do have a bunch of questions, so I'm sorry to cut you off, but we are on a time schedule.
Sure, no problem at all.
But no awesome, such a great presentation, of such a better understanding of what words should be added to an alt text. But let's get into some of the questions here.
Sure.
When is alt text required? Angela says, we use so many images that are decorative. We do use alt text on any images that are important part of the context of the text or graphics with data or info in them.
Okay, and what's the question?
When is alt text required?
Oh, okay. So alt text is required when it carries any visual information that is important for a user to understand. So when we are talking about, you know, the details of a chart or graph or the trend lines, all of that is important to include in alt text. It's also important to pay attention to any surrounding text. If anything's already been explained in the caption or the surrounding text, you don't need to repeat that information. Just think of the way the image is furthering the surrounding text around it.
All right. Dee asked, on a team page with an image gallery, do you include the name of the team members in the alt text?
It depends. Does their name appear below their image? Or is their image truly the only way that you would know their name? So I think that's an important, contextual piece of information to answer. If their name is displayed below, it would just be read twice. So may not be necessary to include.
If you go back to Peter Ingersoll's presentation, he had a picture of himself, and he did a great alt text of describing him, a 60-year-old white man with a smile on his face kind of thing. And then he put his name in the caption, or yes, like you said, if the name is like under the picture, then you don't need to have it in that alt text. So that's good. Anonymous asked, just curious, which role or roles on a web team is generally responsible for creating the alt text, such as a site owner, the content creator, the web developer?
Yeah, it often lands with different teams, but I say that it should go with the person or the team that is closest to the content. So that depends on the organization, but we definitely need to have writers in this role. You have to love to write to appreciate alt text, love the way that language and communication work. So it's really I think belongs with the team that's involved in selecting those images or placing those images on the page, because they have a really good reason for that why. Why does this image exist?
And another question was, what are the roll, tilt, pan? I guess you used that in one of your slides.
I don't know if I understand exactly what you're referring to. Sorry.
Well, the question is, what are roll, tile, and pan? And then there was looked like a correction of tilt.
I really don't know what that's referring to, so we're gonna have to move on.
No problem. Look in the chat, because I believe somebody answered that with a description of what that could be. Whoever asked that question. We have two more minutes. Let's see. Anonymous asks, is there a gap of describing images BTW?
By the way,
okay. What a seeing person sees and what a blind person sees in the alt text, that a seeing person could miss telling in alt text, like a sense that we don't use as much as a blind person would to understand something in an image.
it's a great point. We do need to continuously make sure that the image descriptions that we're writing, we're getting direct feedback from screen reader users, from blind users. Is this information actually getting across? So it's really important to make sure to collect that information from your users to better get that to get that understanding. But leaning on different techniques for image description, not just describing the basics.
What happened? Okay.
Oh, but yes, so feedback from users would be my answer.
Well, thank you so very much again for this presentation, and congratulations on doing your first one, and I hope it's the first of many. We can continue the conversation in the chat or on social media using hashtag WPA11YDAY and hashtag WPAD2023. We also appreciate if you could go to 2023.wpaccessibility.day/feedback to provide anonymous feedback to our speakers on their presentation and can enter to win a t-shirt. Stay tuned. I am done for my time, but I've totally enjoyed it, and thank you for hanging out with me for the last 3 hours. If you did, stay captivating panel discussion, immersive audio description featuring Mark Hadigan and Tanja Milovic, visionary founders of Get Braille, and that's at the 2400 rating. Don't forget to visit our sponsors, who are awesome, and their pages to grab virtual swag and enter for a chance to win a great prize. See you right here after the break.
Thank you to WordPress Accessibility Day 2023 sponsors. Platinum sponsor, Equalize Digital. Equalize Digital's Accessibility Checker plugin is an automated accessibility scanning tool that helps WordPress websites become and stay accessible. Platinum sponsor, Gravity Forms. Gravity Forms is the professional form builder that you need to create beautiful, powerful, and accessible forms. Gold sponsors, 20i, DQ, Empire Caption Solutions, Pressable, and WP Engine. Silver sponsors, Code Geek, Drake Cooper, GoDaddy, Lone Rock Point, NerdPress, Overnight Website by Kinetic Iris, Riola Networks, A11Y Collective, and The Blogsmith. Bronze sponsors, Accessicart, Green Geeks Web Hosting, Hall Analysis SEO Consulting, HDC, ITX, IvyCat, MetaBox, Pixel Chefs, Simply Schedule Appointments, SiteGround, Termageddon, Underrepresented in Tech, Weglot, and Yoast.